live and on the air. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel, Yankee's Outdoor Adventures. I am Maèxelawèn Osapèkwinùnt. You know me as Yankee, and today I'm going to have a guest with me here, the Green Feathers, also a YouTube creator, but a whole lot more. And who isn't anymore a YouTube creator and a whole lot more, right? But before we get into introducing the guest and talking with the guest, I want to give everybody a moment to come into the room and filter into the room. So before I say a whole lot about what the show's about, particularly it's November, so it's Native American Heritage Month, and all month long here on the channel I've been celebrating Native American Heritage Month, and I've been putting together different videos of different history, and I thought it would be fun to do a live show with a brother Native and have him share some of his insights and knowledge as well. I just, guys, here's the whole thing. Native American Heritage Month. How do you celebrate? You learn something new. That's it. And that's all we're trying to do here, is to bring some enlightenment to you, to teach you about a people who not once exist, but do exist, and are still here yet today. A lot of history, of course, has changed throughout the years. But let me go ahead and welcome everyone to the room. Gemma, Uncle Al, anyone else who's coming in, it's great to have you here. Say hello. I'll give you a shout out as we go. Green Feathers. Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first off, Wanishita, thank you for having me on the show. Big fan. Personally, living here in central New Jersey, where I grew up, the heart of Lenape territory, and having a very, very deep understanding of my people growing up, and being lucky enough to live here in our people's territory has given me so much insight and clarity into so much of who it is we are, what we represent currently, and who we've been for the past tens of thousands of years.
Okay, and let me clarify for anyone coming in, when he talks about the land of Lenape, the land that he's in, that actually covered all of New Jersey, most of Pennsylvania, most of New York, down into Delaware. And that is, I also really feel it's important to add that is an assumed location. The actual fact of the matter is that they were probably a lot larger than we realize. And of course,
Absolutely.
a lot of lost history goes on when we talk about Native Americans. So a lot of speculation has come into play. But fortunately, we have archaeologists who still work on this stuff yet today. And we found, I think it was 2011, 2012, somewhere in that ballpark. In your neck of the woods, we found a really huge site that was uncovered. And it really told a lot about how natives did stay longer in one location than we realized. That it was kind of like common knowledge that they built camps. A camp would last about a decade, and then they would move and build another camp, because the ground or whatnot would be used, or the woods would be burnt out from hunting. And in a sense, some of this is probably true for the smaller hunting camps. But there were cities, guys, and this is what we're finding out over time, is there were a lot of Native Americans, and there were cities. And, I think probably one of the biggest things and hardest things for people to realize is that as barbaric, well, I'll use that word, as barbaric as the Native Americans seemed, they seemed lesser to the technologies that were coming over at the time of encouragement. The fact of the matter is, at that point in time, the Native Americans had a more structured government than what was coming over. In fact, it was more sophisticated of a government than what was coming over, which the new Americans found out. That's why we're America today. Hence, the government that you're all living in was a form of the government that was here. when the natives got here. But all right, I know I rambled again. Sorry about that. Green feather.
No, you're completely correct. Wow,
No,
you had me think
on the line.
on many levels here. First off, just leaving where you left off there, having to do with the foundation of the country during the contact period, or the foundation of the country from the European perspective during the contact period. You're completely correct. The Lenape and the way in which they had their very, very ancient usage of land, their kinship, their marital and social ties, their settlements. These were rooted in very ancient civilizations, which in many cases actually preceded the Ice Age. That's something that may not be taught today in school books, but as an archaeologist myself, as someone who goes out very regularly and uncovers a plethora of artifacts, which I have for you today to show, people have been here for many tens of thousands of years. So in that regard, when Europeans arrived, they saw a very wise system of governance, a very wise and ancient, functionable and holistic society, which functioned with nature, with the body, the mind, and the spirit. And that's reflective in the archaeology that I've uncovered, the information that I've read in every single book that I've read. And in fact,
no, let me stop you there just a minute, and
absolutely,
and we'll talk about archaeology for a second. You're in a region that you actually are able to go out and hunt up things that are from very, very long ago.
Yep.
Where is the most common place that you like to hunt for these? Which I know the answer, but I doubt the audience does.
So living in New Jersey happens to be one of the most geographically diverse places in the world. Geologists come here from all over to study the way in which the Earth shifts from one level of very ancient Earth and surface to more modern sandy soil down in South Jersey. And upwards of 15,000 years ago, we had 100+ miles of coastline extended eastwards, which was land. So there's almost an entire state of New Jersey worth of, civilization that's currently under the ocean. That's number one. So
I guess that's really it's a really a good point, because when we think about ancient archaeology, probably most people they want to go to Egypt and things like that. These are the mainstream ancient archaeology things, and from that history, if you follow that type of thing, that so many of those cultures are out in the ocean. They have to go out in the ocean and explore where, these cities were way out here, they find new stuff all the time. What a lot of people don't realize is that there were people here then too. And just like you said, their coastline was at a different spot. That we're talking, over 10,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So, and if you look at the maps correlating to the entire globe, it's very interesting to see how the sea levels were, especially in the Atlantic region. And you go back to myths of Atlantis and things like that, quote unquote myths, and at least seemingly based on the oral record, based on the record that is, for some reason, covered up, quite frankly, there was a very, very ancient pre-Ice Age civilization, which may have extended post-Ice Age via sailors and things like that. There were very advanced technologies across places like the Middle East, North America, Europe and the Middle East, and North America, things like that. Oftentimes people come into question, why did the Bronze Age flourish in the Middle East and in Europe when there was such a lack of copper, while in Michigan and in places like that there were such low copper reserves? I'll tell you what, I have tons of copper spear points and copper artifacts that I have brought to the state archaeologist, and he wrote his dissertation. His name's Dr. Greg Latanzi. He's currently the state archaeologist and ethnologist of New Jersey. Really, really educated individual. He's been perplexed by some of what I found, and I'd be happy to show that to you as well.
Let me interrupt you again for a second. Well, first of all, let me say again a big hi to Gemma and Joseph. Welcome, and Sloan's. It's great to have you guys here. Where you were talking about, the possible the use of metals that maybe history hasn't or has overlooked. It is also kind of important to realize that we have discovered over time that the weapons and the tools that cultures use may have more principle in the culture itself than the mind power of the user. Okay, and
Right.
I'm going to try to explain this to you on a term that maybe everyone can understand. Today, currently, okay, there's very few tribes in the world that actually still function as native tribes.
That's right.
Undisturbed. Okay.
That's
and
right.
Australia gives us the opportunity to witness such things. There's actually two tribes that battle each other. Now we pay witness to this. We don't interrupt. And the interesting thing is one tribe uses spears. It is their ritual fighting tool, and it's what they use. The other side, however, uses bow and arrow. Now, history tells us that it's an advancement from spear to bow and arrow. However, the spear culture knows about the bows and arrows. They know how to use the bow and arrow. They see it used in war all the time, but they do not pick it up to use it. Does this mean they're less educated? No. It means their culture taught them that this was what they were to use.
And a parallel.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry. But a parallel to that, which I am familiar of, is the Spartans. And having battled the incoming fleets of Babylonians and Persians during their time period, they elected to use their spears. I have so many spearheads laid out before me right now, which I'll show you at some point during this, which give credence to that. I mean, granted, the natives here definitely used arrowheads as well for various purposes, but spearheads were very, very crucial for hunting, definitely for warfare. And I'm sure culturally, between the Susquehannocks, the Iroquoian cultures, the Lenape cultures, some of the Cherokee cultures that were coming up northwards, and then many more ancient
we're all
peoples.
related too, guys. I mean, I don't know how many people realize all that either.
That's right.
There were battles that went on here. I mean, in fact, the Iroquois went through what they called the Dark Ages, which was pre-incursion, believe it or not, because there was a lot of turmoil in their clans, and their clans battled amongst each other over trivial things. So, I mean, it's not that there wasn't war here, but I mean, I'll tell you a true statement that can be said about war. There was not ever a religious war fought between the Native Americans and Native Americans. Religion was never the basis. You disrespected me. That might be a whole other story for the next 50 years. All our kids might kill each other over this. But to say that, it was a religious thing, no, that isn't what went on.
That's right.
You do have some artifacts to share with us, and if you want to do that, I'm sure everyone would love to see some things. I'll try to get a bigger display of you here. I know I can. Let me see. Right here it goes. Boom. There you go.
And just to preface really quick on what you left off with in regards to the religion of the place and how that affected the society, going back to the Ice Age, you have to keep in mind people had a very, very intimate relationship between their bodies, the land, and what it was they went out and hunted for food. the way in which they saw the world, the way in which they saw the night sky, what they knew about their ancestors. All of these different things affected their religion of the time. So I'm speaking in very ancient terms.
Right.
And many of the artifacts that I have found, which I'll now show you, are reflective of that. And heavily have to do with ancient concepts dealing with the creation story of man, who we are, and where we go after we die. Based on Ice Age to modern evidence, red ochre, yellow ochre, brown ochre production. And for those of you who don't know, ochre is a natural pigment that's produced from clay that's dug at a certain depth, which our ancestors here, many people around the world, even to this day, many tribal societies utilize ochre as a ritualistic pigment for burial. They wear it on their skin every day for different reasons. Some reasons we don't even know of. In ancient times, there's people who argue that ochre had functions towards moving large stones that we can't move. But in functional terms, to this modern day, what archaeologists know is that ochre production was a staple of the people who lived in the Americas, even up until the contact period. In fact, the word redskins, people think that it has to do with the skin tone of our people, because we were like, we would tan our skins with different fats. When the colonial people came here, they would witness our ancestors tanning their skins with bear fats and things like that. So people say, "Oh, redskins." It's a racial term.
Through Pennsylvania, they actually used a petroleum jelly because there was actual oil fields that were known by the Native Americans. There was legends of them would burn these on purpose at ritual times.
Wow.
And they would use the oil itself as a skin dye. But it was localized. It was localized to where the natural oil was at. So it was localized to the area.
And I have an artifact which I'll show you, which correlates to exactly what you said, which our state archaeologist, again, his name's
Dr. So believe it or not, Native Americans were using fuel oil before
anybody else. Exactly. And that's one thing that people really overlook is the use of materials here. So many people, I feel like, grow up with the preconception that we were just a Stone Age technology-based society exclusively, when the case is really that we used things like petroleum and animal fats for fuel. We used materials like copper to produce electricity, and by that extension, magnetic fields. Because if you have an electric field, you have a magnetic field as well, and by that extension, we don't know exactly how certain technologies were operated in the past. As someone who has a heavy understanding of how tools in the present work, because I do a lot of blue-collar work with modern tools, there's tools that I uncover from the Stone Age that baffle my mind truly in terms of how they were produced. I can show you some right now.
Yeah, let's see some, because I know everybody's interested in seeing some stuff. So let's see something and tell us about it.
Going back to what we started with in regards to the religion of, a lot of the Ice Age people and earlier having to do with ochre production. Much of what I find on many sites around here in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania are grindstones and pestles, which currently even still retain some sediment of red ochre on them. Yellow ochre as well. Again, these were different pigments that ancient people used for different reasons. Cave paintings, covering themselves in different pigments for different reasons that we still don't.
For different purposes, different colors for different times, and yep, definitely.
So right here, this is an example of a small handheld pestle.
Awesome, and it's got a good polish on one end, and it's worked on the other. You know what would be really, I think, would be helpful to the audience watching, especially if they're around places where they could possibly find things like this. Tell us what stands out to you to point that out as a tool and not just a river stone.
Is there any way in which I can flip my camera?
You should be able to go. You should be able to go on your profile. Just turn your camera sideways.
Got it. So right up here, I'll show you right off the bat. And I'm sorry that I have my whole table and my whole kitchen here covered in artifacts.
No, it's perfect.
So generally speaking, and I'm going to do a very quick run through of some common artifacts, at least here in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York. This here is a grindstone, and if you see all these little circular peck marks all over here, those were actually made to smooth out the stone with a drill, either made of stone or copper, that brought the stone down to the particular point at which this individual wanted to shape it to this width and length.
Right.
It's hard to see here on the camera quality, but there's red stains and yellow stains, which are remnants of ochre on this particular pestle. And I'll show you a few other ones right now. This one right here.
To stay about your other tool for 1 minute, that would probably indicate that when you get the traces of the ochre, that was probably a crushing tool, maybe something they crushed with worked with the ochre to create the pigments and the colors.
The way in which this would function is on a flat surface, a flat stone. I have many of those as well. They're a little bit bulky, and they would fit on your lap. They'd be maybe an inch or two wide, and they would work by simply grinding the ochre or whatever it is, corn,
or smashing it, or essentially, guys, it's a hand millstone. That's what
correct.
You're looking at there.
Now, this one here has remnant of red ochre on it. You can kind of see the distinction between the gray stone here and the red pigment on the front.
Yep.
That would be used like this.
Yep.
A lot of these here, again, smoothly polished. These are what are called biface stone tools. And what I mean by that is that they have two sides. They're, for the most part, highly polished and highly worked. This one you can even see grooves for where your finger should go.
Right, which is how a lot of these tools would become. They would get shaped, and then the use of the tool itself began to shape it. And tools were, when we find villages and we find all these tools like archaeologists do today, they uncover the villages and they find all these tools and stuff. You got to realize that's most likely a village that died because of the fact that tools were way more valuable than that. You didn't let your tools. You didn't leave your tools behind. They would have been handed down. They would have been
exactly. That's right.
That's right.
It's.
I do remember a story where a native was once asked because they did all their skinning of a deer with deer bone. So kind of like a philological question was asked and posed to him was, well, which came first, the deer or the tool? If you're skinning that deer with the tool, and his quick reply was, well, the deer came first, the tools came from my grandfather.
That's right.
And the point to that is that they were handed. These tools were continued to be handed down. If it was a working tool for the clan, you didn't get buried with it. You someone else,
son or daughter. That's right.
That's right.
Many of the spearheads which I found, which I'll now show you.
Yeah, let's see some of them. We are running on time.
I've got so many of them. I've got many arrowheads, many spearheads, and for future reference, I will make many videos about this. Right now on my channel, I don't have a lot of content about native stuff. I have a baby, so I've been taking care of her. But
Makes
in the
sense.
future, I definitely plan on producing a lot of videos on what I found. So let me show you some
Yeah,
of the
well,
spearheads
let's
that I
see what
found.
you got. I think searching for these things and finding them in video would be a great idea, to be honest with you.
Oh, for sure. This right here is approximately, definitely an Ice Age era tool, the spearhead from what we call essentially the Clovis culture. It's hard to see here, but the tops of these heavy spearheads that are quite larger are usually more weighted. There will always be a type of what we call fluting in the middle here, which is
Right.
essentially, it makes the spear point more aerodynamic. Here's another point. Here's the fluting right here. Here's the shape of it. Very heavily triangular. These here, they're very large, and as a hunter, this was not used to kill a deer. These are used for mastodon,
No.
mammoths, giant ground
Yeah.
sloths, things like that.
Yeah,
This one right
that's gotta
here,
be much older.
this is a very classic looking Clovis kind of era. You can tell by the notching how old it is. And again, that term might be unfamiliar to people watching, but what I mean by that is the way in which these spear points were formed is indicative, and the materials that were used is indicative of very old hunting purposes. And again, these were passed down from generation to generation, and you can tell how aerodynamic they would shape things based on different factors that we look for, the points, the curves, the what we call the stems or the tails. And again, each culture that would come into the region would bring a different type of element to the new technology that was already there.
Right. Right. Now, Uncle Al said something about what was that, Al? I think I missed it. It went somewhere. Well, anyway, Dwayne is in here and said that he had found some petrified wood. Yeah, that's that one there. He had found
Petrified wood,
petrified wood.
I have some arrowheads made of petrified wood, and I even have some arrowheads made of fossils, because there's a brook near me that's very, very heavily laden with fossils. And I'm just giving you a quick run through right now of just a couple of the many, many, many dozens. I have so many dozens right there and over there of spearheads and everything. These are all from different eras, but for sure, the natives would find things like fossils or petrified wood, and they would use them. They would
He
have
also mentioned
curiosity
the
in them and make them
tomahawk
into
still.
different things.
Right.
Tomahawks, I have tomahawks. I'll show you one right now. This one is very old, but you can tell by the shape of it. It's
Definitely.
a small axe head for sure, but it could have for sure been used as a tomahawk. The stick or the handle really would have been, laid through right here. They would notch a hole through, and they would wedge this wood into it, and they would fire treat it. And in some instances, they would lay like a sap or a binding material, and then of course they would use a rope to bind a material like this, and then this would be thrown as an axe head. These are all different examples of axes that I have here for different purposes. This one would be used for woodworking. This one here, this is a good example of what we call a classic biface Stone Age tool. You can see how highly polished it is. This was found by me at a site about 2 miles down the road, which, based on what I found there, it was used highly for ochre production. I've actually uncovered a fire pit from the site that I've found that at. This here is a hammerhead.
Nice. And Dwayne also mentioned that the Cree are Canada's largest native tribe, and you also have a lot of Lenape up there in Canada. That was part of the split back in the 1700s. And hello, Budget. Welcome, brother. We're about to wrap up though. Green Feathers was showing us some of his collection of things that he has found along the well, I guess you've been hunting that. What do you got there, bro?
this right here is a piece of what we call Adena age mound pottery. So the mound builders were a culture who, again, highly ritualized ochre production for religious purposes with burial, and they would make what today we call birdstones. This is an example right here. It's like a hawk. You can see the eye right here, the beak, and again, they're very symmetrical and.
That's that would be pre-Native American to what we knew of Native American when we came here.
Yes, that's correct. And here's another example with the they would drill holes into the top and the bottom of them. And a really interesting website that I've read suggested that these birdstones here would be tied to the heads of the deceased, and that there would, be a lot of ochre production again from these pestles. And based on what I found at the mounds that I found these at, and these at the same ones, that seems to be the case. Now, this piece here of Adena pottery.
It's probably really important to point out that, as little as we actually know about our own native history, when we're talking about these sites that you're showing now, that's so much older. We have no clue who these people were. And we have these mountains all over Ohio, too. And the fact of the matter is, guys, we have no idea who these people were.
This here is what's called a bear totem.
Yeah, the mounds were here when the natives took part of the land, and that was long before incursion. So, a matter of fact, the one I think they finally changed the one in Ohio that for the longest time they had a sign that stated the local Indians had built the mound, and that couldn't have been further from the truth.
No, for sure. There was different waves of cultures that occurred definitely before the Ice Age and now. And again, I know that based on the inches and feet of soil at which I find some of I have so many artifacts here. I mean, I'll make many videos in the future to show you guys more elaborately what I found, but there's Dwayne, a very, very deep history.
Dwayne is right that they do not teach enough of this stuff in school. When we talk about, especially when we talk about Native Americans, there's so much of that history that is vital to the creation of America in the first place that it's really a crying shame that it's not taught in school. And of course, like if you follow me, you all know my history hero is Chief White Eyes, but I got to bring him up anytime America is mentioned because he is just as much of the influential person as George Washington, but yet he gets no recognition. Nobody remembers him, and it's a shame.
That's one frustrating aspect of Native identity in general is the overriding of the history that was here before, for sure. And it's reflective in the construction of things that many people don't want on the property that exists here and in Pennsylvania, Ohio. I'm sure there's things that people don't want built that our ancestors would be opposed to, for sure, that are detrimental to the environment in many regards.
Right. Well, Green Feathers, I want to thank you very much. If anyone has any questions for Green Feathers, and feel free to drop it in there, but we're going to go ahead and probably wrap it up right here. And Green Feathers, maybe I'll have you come back again. You are an outdoor enthusiast. Maybe I'll put you on the spot and give you my outdoor enthusiast questionnaire, and we'll get the audience to know you a little better that way.
Absolutely.
Canada, they also don't teach enough about Native. I know they don't. They don't anywhere, because they got a lot of dark history. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard for a country like America. It's really hard for America to face up to it because right now, even in the times we're in right now, we're trying to calm diversities and all this. We're like, offending people left and right. And then to actually open a can of worms of like what type of treachery you did to the people that nobody's talking about. we better
Yep.
off leave nobody talking about them. And that's, and that's probably where we stand with that and why it's not taught more in school, because we don't need the kids in school growing up and asking questions about, hey, why did we treat these people so rough? We don't need that because,
it's
it might mess
detrimental
up
to the people currently in power to have people questioning the narrative.
Right. Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly. Well, again, Green Feathers, thank you so much. You can hang in here while I disconnect. Everybody, if you come in during the replay, feel free to leave a comment if you have a question, even for Green Feather. I'm sure he'll pop back over to the video, and if he sees a comment for him, he'll answer it. But I'll definitely answer all of them. So we're gonna leave it there. And thank you, Dwayne, and thank you guys for coming. Everyone who stayed and hung out, I so appreciate you. Until our trails meet again, I hope all your adventures are awesome. Winishita for watching.